everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. Our show is going to be about helping caregivers find veterans benefits, and we are so lucky to have Nancy R. Poland with us today, who has jumped through all the hoops and wants to make your life a little bit easier in terms of being able to find those things. But before I introduce you to Nancy, I do want to just mention a couple of resources that I think would be helpful for you as well. One is AlzheimersSpeaks.com. We have been curating information from tools and videos and audio, all kinds of things, from art to hearing people with dementia speak themselves to quick tips and so much more. So just go to AlzheimersSpeaks.com and you'll be able to access all that information. You'll be able to find our book there too, Betty the Bald Chicken, Lessons in How to Care. And then if you want to check out Dementia Map, that is our sister company. And Dementia Map is all about a global resource. So you'll find resources for services, tools, and products. We have about 150 categories you can search. You'll have blog articles, there's an events calendar and a glossary of terms, and so much more. So check that out. It's free to use. We're not going to ask you for any contact information as well. And then I want to talk to you about Twiddle. Twiddle is a company who has created these amazing sensory aids, and they're wonderful for dementia. A lot of times people get anxious and they just need something to do, something that's soft and comfortable. So they've made these little twiddle muffs that have all kinds of little gadgets to kind of keep their hands busy. Works wonderful if you're dealing with sundowning or if someone gets anxious while traveling. It could be in the car, on a plane, or maybe they're just sitting alone by themselves and feeling uncomfortable. They also have another product called Adapt Wrap, and it works great for someone who maybe has lost their upper mobility. They don't have to raise their arm. It hooks all in the back, so you don't have to worry about disrobing. Sometimes that can be an issue for people. So you can find both of those products at the number 4 and then twiddlesplural.com, 4twiddles.com. Now let's go ahead and meet Nancy. Well, I am so excited to have Nancy back with me. She hasn't been with you yet because we ran through this once before, but we had a little technology glitch, and so we are re-recording her whole show. Doesn't happen often, but she's the lucky one it happened to and was gracious enough to come back. So, Nancy, welcome today. I'm thrilled to have you back.
Thank you, Lori. I'm thrilled to be here today, and we'll just look at that other show as a practice run.
Okay.
Or today.
Wonderful. Now we're going to be talking about caregivers and how to help them through kind of the maze of securing VA benefits. And I know I went through that myself, and that was a struggle. And I still, I learned from the last show, when we recorded, how many more things were out there that I had no idea of when I was dealing with my dad at all. So this is going to be a wealth of information here that people are going to hear. I can promise you that. But before we get started, why don't you give people a little background about yourself, Nancy?
Okay. Again, my name is Nancy R. Poland. I'm the owner of Grace's Message. I'm an author, a speaker, and trainer. And in Grace's Message, I say, with grace and hope, I provide written and spoken communication on caregiving, loss, and other valuable topics. My mission is to help people, especially caregivers. I do talk about some other types of situations. And most important, my dad was a veteran. He was a World War II veteran. I'll talk a little later how we obtained some veteran benefits for him. And he did end up having dementia. So like many of our listeners struggled with the situation. He first said they said he had vascular dementia and then at the end Lewy body dementia. So I've just started my efforts here to help others, and I'm so excited to talk about veterans today.
I'm just thrilled that you're here sharing this information with people. It's going to be so helpful. For yourself, have you been personally touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends?
Yes, my dad had dementia.
Mhm.
Again, it was vascular and Lewy body. He had both. And I was a very direct caregiver for him. A lot of effort went into the last 6 years of his life, but it was coming on gradually for years. It also does run in my family. So I have some aunts and uncles who struggled with dementia. And my eldest cousin just died last year of Alzheimer's, which is a little scary. So, yes, I've been touched by it, and I understand caregivers, although I didn't live with them, and that's like a whole nother intensive level of caring.
Yeah, that's quite a few. When I ask people that, it's really rare when they haven't been touched by the disease, and it's becoming more and more common of people saying multiples in their family have been
Yes.
touched now. So this is a real important topic because so many people are afraid of getting dementia, but again, once you have it, what do you do? What are the resources to tap into? And this is a huge wealth of information. So now you have a poem that last time you opened with when we talked. Do you want to go ahead and read that one about Betsy Ross?
Yes. So since we're taping this in July, although it may come out in August, I chose a poem that my dad wrote, likely before he had dementia, about Betsy Ross and George Washington. Who's that lady sewing the cloth? She says her name is Betsy Ross. I said, what are you doing with that old rag? She said, can't you see? I'm sewing a flag. Who told you to do a thing like that? Says she, a fella named George in a funny hat. Where did he come from, this guy named George? He came and half froze from Valley Forge. I know it sounds like a mystery, but George said me and the flag would go down in history. And sure enough, it was no lie, because here we are on the 4th of July.
That is so cute. Now, whenabouts did your dad write that? Was he living with dementia at the time?
Maybe 150 poems. My sister put 50 of them in a book, and then after he died, we found about 100 more. So he wrote them throughout his adult life. There's no dates on them, so we don't know when he wrote them. I included a fair number of these poems in my book I wrote about my dad's dementia, Dancing with Louie, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But he wrote about life. He wrote about his childhood, and he was very patriotic. He loved to write patriotic poems. He was a veteran. He wrote some about war, family, love, all sorts of things. So I'm just really inspired by what he did, and what time period I don't know, but it's amazing that he left us that legacy.
Yeah, that's really cool. And his visual concept, I mean, I could just picture that. And you do such a nice job reading it as
Oh,
well. I mean, it really it brings about some, emotions and again the visualizations. And I just found myself smiling the whole time, through it. I just thought it was very witty, the way he pulled that all together. So thanks for sharing that with us. What was your family's experience, trying to utilize the veterans benefits?
any situations I'll talk about that really, really helped my parents. So the first one was we sold our house in 2006, which, if some of you remember back then, it was before the big housing crash. Thank goodness, because we did get some money out of it. But we rented them a one-level townhouse. We paid the down payment, and the house was supposed to close before the first month's rent was due. But there were huge delays on the closer's end. So think subprime mortgages. And this poor woman just had fits and starts. So, none of us had the money for their second month rent, and they certainly didn't. And I'm just thinking, what are we going to do? So I called the county VA office. I said, my dad's a veteran. He's in a crisis. We don't know what to do. Are there any grant programs? And the very helpful gentleman said he would check and get back to me. And within a short amount of time, he came back and said disabled American veterans, or DAV, would lend my parents $1,000 until the house closed. And the representative drove out. He met my dad in person, shook his hand, thanked him for his service, handed him a check. My dad, who was in the haze of dementia at the time, was thrilled because he knew that we would pay it back. He didn't want to take, government money, although of course he did later because he had to, but it was just a really good thing. And he just felt good about it. And the house did finally close in the middle of July in the heat, and we did get the money. So the second one, which undoubtedly just saved them financially, saved the whole family, because I don't know what would have happened. My dad thought he was going to work till the day he died. He was one of those guys who just didn't want to stop working. And when he got dementia, he couldn't bring in any kind of income. So my sister and I went to a conference at the University of Minnesota, and they still have great conferences on memory loss and seniors. And I heard about something called aid and attendance. Now, you might want to jot some of these down. I've also sent Lori a follow-up article she will post that has a deeper dive, I call it, into some of these benefits, so you can read about it there. But aid and attendance is for wartime veterans and their surviving spouses, 65 years and older. It's tax-free. It's provided by the VA. And it's provided to provide financial aid to offset the cost of long-term care. Now, you have to have been in during a time of war. You do not have to have served overseas. My dad was at the end of the war, and he never went overseas. But they basically have to be housebound. And not that they can never go out of the house, but they clearly have to be unable to work or get out much. And it just helps with daily living. My dad applied for it. It was a long, complicated process, which, like Lori said, these things they require a lot of persistence. But after about 8 months, he got $1,600 a month plus back pay. And I think it's more than that now when I was looking it up online. So honestly, that just kept my parents in good, safe housing, took care of their needs. So it was just a blessing. And the third piece of the veterans benefits I want to talk about is that we took my dad to the VA clinic. Now, we live in the Twin Cities, and there's a large VA clinic in Bloomington, but there's also a smaller one in St. Cloud. And because where we lived, we went to the one in St. Cloud. And they were great. We would take, most of a day to go. He'd get blood work. We'd see the physician. He'd go through the memory clinic. When he had to have a driving assessment, when he was finally pulled over and couldn't drive anymore, the police ordered an assessment, and the VA did that for no charge. There were medications received for no charge. They sent him a blood pressure medicine when he started, or blood pressure machine when he started going. So they were great. I have no complaints about that clinic.
Wow, that's nice. The driving thing that can get a little pricey. That's several $100s typically if you have to go, take that test. And I know I had a friend, and then you're driving. They don't let you. They used to let you drive your own vehicle, but now they have vehicles. And it's hard. I mean, I get into a rental car. I don't know what I'm doing these days. Is it a push button? Is it a key? And all of those things. Where's my windshield wipers and my lights? So I can't even imagine how difficult, that test is, because usually doesn't go smooth. And normally they don't want to give up their license. That's why you're there. Stuff. So there's a lot of stress. So that helps there. And it's nice that, they've got the memory clinic and the free prescriptions and things like that. I've heard a lot of people rave about their care if somebody moves into one of their communities. And I know there was a lot of press where it was really bad for a while, but I know here in Minnesota, I must have at least a dozen people that just can't say enough good things about it. I mean, just really felt that their loved ones were cared for with dignity, that they actually knew them, were engaging and had fun things for them to do. And so that was nice to hear as well.
Yeah, well, he said he wanted to go to the old soldiers home, but it never worked out to have him go to a VA nursing home. But yeah, like I said, I have no complaints. They were kind. They were helpful. So, and Lori, I could do another whole session on driving with my dad. It's outlined in my book, Dancing with Louie. So, yeah, that was a nightmare.
Yeah, that one's a tough one. Oh my gosh. Now, I had a question too on the aid in attendance. So you said your dad got like $1,600 a month. Was he
Mhm.
still living independently or was he like in a memory care at that time?
No, he was still living independently.
Okay.
He started getting it before my mom died, and then after my mom died, he still got it. When he went in the nursing home, so that all gets complicated with Social Security and government benefits, and I think I don't even know how to explain it. They would take some of those benefits directly, um, and then he eventually went out of money and had to go on medical assistance.
Mhm.
But that wasn't near the end of life. So, but yeah, he got it living at home for I don't know several years.
So then did he use that for like home care or was it just general assistance?
It was no, it was for anything you wanted to. But after my mom died, we moved into a kind of quasi-assisted living. It was a senior apartment, but we could buy benefits, buy up. So buy food. You know, he'd get
Uh-huh.
meals. He'd get nurses giving his medication. He'd get medical checks. So we probably wouldn't have been able to afford that without these extra benefits.
Okay.
I mean, they just send you the money. You can use it for whatever you like, but you know, we use it for housing, for his care,
Mhm.
food, those type of things.
Are there benefits specifically that you're aware of for caregivers themselves that are caring for a loved one?
There are, you know, we're aware of some of the health and disability, life insurance and things, but there's several more I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
And you can find a lot of these on va.gov, and we'll talk later about some other places to look. So one which is benefits caregivers indirectly that I learned about when I was researching this is the home modification program. And the US government right now has 150 million in funding each year, and fewer than half of the eligible veterans take advantage of this program. They will do things like put railings in your house, you know, make a walk-in tub, you know, however you can modify your house for your veteran. Some of it I think you apply for, but also some can be written by a prescription from a physician. It's called Home Improvements and Structural Alterations, HISA, which, as I said last time, the government loves to give things kind of long and complicated names. I found that actually on the AARP website. Actually, I saw an AARP article and then I looked it up. So you can find it on AARP, you can find it on the VA website. But there are two programs specific for caregivers. And I love these programs, and I think they are fairly new. I don't remember them being around when we were caring for my dad, who's been gone about a dozen years now. So the important thing is that the veteran has to be enrolled in VA health caregiver and VA health care.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's the first step. And then the caregiver has to apply. So the first one, again, has a long and complicated name, the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers. Now, if you want to, you can Google PCAFC. Again, it stands for the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers.
My gosh, they need to learn to title things better. So
Oh,
that,
I think an acronym you can that stands for something,
yep.
but there's specific eligibility. But they include care assistance support the veteran for health and well-being, everyday personal needs like feeding, bathing, and dressing, and safety, protection, and instruction in their daily living environment. And the caregivers can directly receive these benefits. And they do have a primary caregiver, and then there are also going to be a couple of secondary ones. So maybe it's a spouse and a couple of their children or nieces and nephews or something. And they can get caregiver education and training, mental health counseling, travel, lodging, and financial assistance when traveling with the veteran to receive care. And there is some financial assistance. I wrote about this in my article, so I don't have all the details in front of me. For veterans who either, I think it was before 2007 or after the Gulf War, or there's 1997. So it's people who are during a time of war where the caregiver can actually get financial aid. So that's definitely something to check out. The second one is not quite as involved. It's more for general caregivers, so they call it, excuse me, Program of General Caregiver Support Services, or PGCSS. Again, that is the Program of General Caregiver Support Services. And you do have to register. And, the veteran has to agree that you can do these things if they can. Otherwise, there's another form you can fill out that, you can speak for them. But there's skills training videos. And how many caregivers? I mean, we go into caregiving. I personally had no idea how to do some of the things that my parents needed. I mean, simply bathing or, changing pain patches or transferring them. I mean, that's can be very difficult. So there's some great videos. One that's near and dear to my heart for personal reasons is called VA, at least it stands for something, VA Save. And this is for veterans at risk of suicide. And SAVE stands for Signs, Ask, Validate, Encourage, and Expedite. So it's for anybody who interacts with veterans. And I would say you have to create a logon. But this video is great for anyone who is worried about someone who might be showing signs of suicide, or you simply want to learn about it. It's an 18-minute video. You can get CEUs for it if you're a professional. And it's just an essential video. I would say anybody who cares for a veteran one way or another should watch this and look for signs.
I agree. Because the suicide rate is so high amongst our vets. And then if you're dealing with someone with dementia, that especially in the early stages to depression, and there's a lot of talk that I should say there's a lot of thought that isn't talked about that's happening there. And I've been kind of privy to a lot of those conversations because people feel comfortable telling me that, but a lot of family members aren't aware of their thoughts.
Well, and you think of Robin Williams, I don't know that he's a veteran, but he died by suicide. And when they did the autopsy, they found he had Lewy Body dementia, which is what my dad had. And they said because he was so intelligent, his brain kind of rewired around. So Lewy bodies are like little proteins, unlike Alzheimer's, which is, tangles and plaques. His brain would rewire itself around the protein deposits, and he would have good days and bad days. Mm-hmm. And, they tested him for Parkinson's and different things, but he died by suicide, I think, just because he didn't know what was going on, with his brain. So it can happen to anyone, trust me. And this particular program, the Program of General Caregiver Support Services, has mobile, email, and web support groups. Support groups are so important. My mom and I went to a support group when my dad had dementia. And even though my mom, she was pretty shy, she didn't like to talk in public, it was great because she actually did end up talking a little bit. And, there were people who were experiencing what we were experiencing. Some of the things people with dementia do and what they say. And, maybe they get angry or they lose things all the time. And it's just so helpful to know other people are frustrated. What?
I was going to say those support groups are so critically important. And I know for myself, I pushed them off. Like I don't have time to so I kind of looked at it like socialize and get to know other people. And it's like, I don't have time in my day. I'm not going to do this. And then when I actually went, it was like, oh my gosh, these people really get it. And then it was like, I loved going because so many people don't understand what you're dealing with. And, for me, I was looking for something dementia specific. But what I've learned over the years is there's so much overlap. It doesn't make any difference who you're caring for, get ideas. And again, it's still this kind of cohort that's out there that understands this is not always an easy job. And there's a lot of adaptation and you can do modifications in the house, you can do modifications in the routine. But I think the biggest modification is how we think about it. Mm-hmm. And when we hear other people's stories, it's easier to kind of change from that checklist to almost like a heart list of how am I going to approach this? And for me, that made a huge difference. But I just can't say enough about those support groups because so often the care partner, caregiver, whatever you want to call them, carer. There's so many labels out there. They're not taking care of themselves, and this is a way to really help them find some balance. And sometimes we just need to feel like someone's listening to us to process our own emotions, and it's a safe space. So I can't speak highly enough of, check those out for sure.
Yeah.
It'll be well worth your time. And, you might hit a group that it doesn't fit your needs or, doesn't have the personalities you're looking for. Don't write them all off. They're all different, you know.
Well, I know my mom would say, you just don't know what goes on here. And not looking back, because then she passed away first, and then there we were dealing with that, and we're like, oh my goodness, I wonder what, him just losing things, or it's just, their behavior sometimes just is baffling.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear other people have those same frustrations or same solutions is great. So they even have respite care and peer support with this second program, the general caregiver. So yeah, they're definitely worth looking into. And if it's all very confusing, I'll give you the VA National Caregiver Support Line, which is 1-855-260-3274. One more time, if you're jotting it down, 855-260-3274. And they have a caregiver support person who will actually help you, figure this all out. So don't hesitate to reach out. It doesn't obligate you. It doesn't, you're not saying anything bad about your veteran. It's for caregivers, and they will help you.
So it's not the push the button. I mean, or maybe you have to push a button to
Maybe, yeah.
to get to that person, but you will actually talk with a live individual versus the bot going, does this help? Does this help?
Are you frustrated? Push one. Yeah. Are you angry? No, it's not like that. So yeah, I haven't personally tried that number, but because like I said, a lot of this has come on since I cared for my dad, but definitely the government's put out this money for a reason, and they don't want it just to sit there. And sometimes you wonder if it's use it or lose it. So, use the benefits, use the helplines, apply for the programs.
Yeah, I just wish they would, when they put this money out there to develop these programs, I wish they would push a marketing budget so people know that they're there.
I know. I wrote another article for another organization about caregivers, and here's some theoretical questions you might ask one of the candidates, and one was about VA benefits. First, they have streamlined it a lot, is my understanding, but can you find better ways to streamline and streamline the application process? And what do you do to make sure your constituents know about these benefits? Because, like I said, if we hadn't gone to that conference that day, I never would have heard of aid in attendance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, or the caregiver support, we love our veterans and we want to help them. And caregivers for veterans are people who definitely need help, and the government recognizes that. So don't be afraid to reach out.
A question for you with the aid in attendance. I remember back when I was selling real estate, there were people that was their job. They didn't work for the government, but they educated people on aid and attendance, and they could help them figure out how to get their discharge papers, because you got to have your discharge papers if you're going to get any of these benefits and stuff, and really help figure out what would work for you. Do you know if those individuals are still out there?
Yes, for sure. So yes, it can get very frustrating making these applications online, especially. Or if you want to do them on paper, you still have to go online and print out the forms or get someone to do it for you. But there are backlogs and delays, and you need a lot of paperwork. And I talked about that too in the article that I gave you to post. But one of the best ones is the veteran service organizations. So they come through organizations like the American Legion, the VFW, DAV, the Disabled American Veterans, and they will give free assistance with claims. Now, I work for a nonprofit, but I worked with the government for years, and I did some grants, so I wasn't really, too shocked by all the paperwork. I could kind of handle it, but still there are things I didn't know. So I did call a VSO And they would say, okay, on this such and such form, put this exact wording when I was applying for aid and attendance. Or, oh, no, don't check that box, check this one, or we'll fall through and then do this. So they were very helpful. Um, you can search on the VA website for VSO representatives. And then another way to find those people or people who will help out is through your county, or sometimes if you're in a small county, through the regional offices. Like I live in Anoka County in Minnesota, and we have one, but we're a pretty big county. I also know St. Paul has a Veterans Affairs office. And those people will, again, help you. This was the gentleman I called who helped get the loan for my parents. So, again, don't be afraid to help them, to contact them. They're helpful. I never talked to somebody on the phone who wasn't kind and helpful, even the people trying to get the paperwork through. I'm sure they're frustrated, but they were always trying as hard as they could. So again, those local people, they can help provide information. They can be a resource. You can go in person. I know in the town I used to live in, which is in Anoka, Minnesota, there's a big office building they've created now just to help veterans. So I don't know if that's more common in other communities. The VA website is amazing. It has so many tools, and sometimes it can be a little hard to wade through. So AARP, which all of us over 50 can become members, to my surprise. That they thought I was old then. But they have a great website. If you type in veterans, or you type in aid and attendance, or you type in caregivers, they have many resources, and they're easy to understand. They have some downloadable brochures, things like that. So they're very helpful. And the e-benefits portal, again, on the VA website, helps people manage their benefits once you've gotten through the system. Now, some people cannot handle the paperwork, or maybe their loved one lives far away, or, for all sorts of reasons, it's complicated. So you can hire an accredited attorney or a claims agent. And look for one who specializes in veterans law, or maybe you just have a complicated case which you need help with. They can represent the veterans with their claims and appeals. And again, sometimes things don't go through and you have to appeal, and maybe at that point you're just overwhelmed and frustrated, so you want to and can afford to hire help. Unfortunately, most of these professionals work on a contingency basis. So they only get paid if the veteran wins their case. So if you're getting aid and attendance and you get 10 months backlog pay, they'll maybe take 10% of it or something. I mean, don't quote me on that number, but that's basically how they work. And they can, again, help you file an appeal. If you're denied, it's like an insurance claim. How many of us have insurance claims, or somebody typed in the wrong code, or, they didn't look close enough at your policy, that you can appeal these things. And again, it takes some fortitude to do that, but again, you can get help with these organizations. So, just be persistent is my recommendation. And it was hard because I was working full time. I still had a kid at home, a husband. My mother, she had all sorts of problems. She had kidney cancer and some other things. So it wasn't easy, but we did persist and get the money.
Well, that's good. It's it's just complicated. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and you have to keep asking questions. And I don't care, if you're dealing with dementia, if you're a vet or not, in healthcare, you have to advocate.
Yeah.
You have to never stop asking questions. And, if you don't like the answer, ask somebody else, because as we all know, I don't care what you're dealing with. Depends on who you get on the phone sometimes. Do they have the knowledge base? Are they in the mood to give you credit? Are they, going to be helpful? All of those things
definitely
can change. So if you've heard that someone else has gotten that benefit, if you say no, and again, this is nothing against the VA, but this is just, I call into Comcast and someone will say no, and I'll call in again. Oh yeah, we can fix that, or whatever it is. So it really can vary a lot of times, and it's more work, but it's typically worth it in the long run, I think. If anyone's just tuning in, we are talking with Nancy R. Poland, and she is with Grace's Message. And she's just been giving us just some wonderful, wonderful insights regarding VA benefits and how they can help you and your family, tap into how do you maneuver it first? How do you find it, and how you can utilize it. So it's been great. And you can go to her website, which is Nancy R. Poland, or she also has gracesmessages.com as well. She is an author of a beautiful book that we're going to talk about here in a little bit as well. She is on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. So you can easily access her and her information. And like Nancy said, I will also be posting a link to an article that's going to go into more details, and you can print that out and get some of these great resources as well. I do want to also mention at this time, just briefly, a webmaster that I actually use myself called Q for Good. And I love giving them a little plug because they are, and I've been doing websites for years and years and years, and they are by far the best service organization that I've ever had. And so, you can just go to qforgood.com. They love, especially working with socially conscious companies that are trying to move things forward. But the communication, the reduced stress, the actual meeting of deadlines has been absolutely exceptional. So for me, it's helped reduce a lot of stress, and I just think everybody should use them. But that's just me on that. So let's get back to Nancy though, and talk a little bit about, as good as all these things are, there's always problems that can arise. And did you run into any issues, when you were trying to access benefits? I mean, you talked about maybe having to get an attorney. Did you guys actually have to, get an appeal at all for yourselves, or?
No, they approved it, but again, I think a lot of it was due to that veteran service organization who told me what wording to use where.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they know the behind the scenes tricks to get through. And having, like I said, I worked in contracts and grants for years with several government agencies, and you just have to have the exact right thing on the form or it'll bomb out. So, that's just one of the tricks. But again, I have a friend who, she lives in Florida and her mom was up here, and they did hire an attorney to do all their mom's paperwork and applications and paying her bills. So it's definitely possible, and it's can be a good choice for some people.
Yep. And again, you had mentioned about getting an attorney that actually knows the veterans benefit. It's kind of like in real estate. If you're going to get an attorney, get a real estate attorney, because boy, when I sold, I saw more bad contracts written by attorneys that weren't up to today's, kind of codes and ethics and things like that. So
Yep.
that can really push you through greatly. But I've heard, with the service organizations too, that people could save that expense because of their guidance.
You don't have to be an attorney to fill out these forms.
Mm-hmm.
They walk you through it, but you just have to be persistent. One thing I have on my website, I have a whole caregiver site on my website with different resources, and I have a free, it's called the Important Documents Checklist, that you can download. It's a PDF fillable form, and you can keep track of where important paperwork is. So you could go through it with your parents, or I've done it for ourselves because something happened to my husband and I. How would my son know who our insurance agent is, or how would he know where our legal paperwork is? So it's very user friendly. I'm sure it's a lifesaver. I've saved it out on a shared drive. I also have my sister on it as an alternative person for our care, our paperwork. But yeah, because and it also helps you get things organized. My mother was the most organized human being on earth. She was a bookkeeper for my dad for years, and every piece of paper was where I could find it. Mm-hmm. Things like house titles, car titles, insurance, all that she had together. And we could only wish everybody was that organized. I've tried to be, but I'll never be as good as my mom. But
yeah. Now, is that on your Grace's message or your Nancy R. Poland?
Well, they're the same thing. So Nancy R. Poland is the name of the website, but thanks to Q for Good, I was trying to figure out how to point it using Grace's message. And I am not a programmer. I've done my own website by fits and starts, but so I had him look at it and go, yep, you have it right, so it should work, and it does. And I had him look at some sizing, spacing things for me, and they didn't even charge me for that little bit of work, which was nice.
They're so sweet. They're so kind.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand so much, but again, I'm not a programmer. I don't understand the back stuff, and it was made. So yeah, so I mean, you can type in either nancyrpoland.com or gracesmessage.com. I'm trying to simplify it with gracesmessage.com, but either one, it's the same website.
Okay.
Resources, and I have a newsletter you can sign up for, and different options that you can use for free.
Wonderful. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks
Yeah.
for letting us know that. So getting back to that question, did you have any problems at all, in terms of accessing benefits, like a story or something you can share as an example?
Some of the problems were, and again, this is a dozen years ago, so hopefully it's better, but my parents had moved. Well, my dad moved after my mom died. We moved him, and he kept getting mail at the old address, and I would call because you have to call, and yeah, yep, we have his address changed. Well, it didn't go through, so that took a few times, and then I would sign this form, and he signed the form. He could sign it that I could speak for him. And so every phone call, they'd say, we can't talk to you. And I'd be like, yes, because I filled out this form number, or whatever it was, and I can, he can't talk for himself. He has dementia. So that was an ongoing discussion at the beginning of every call. And again, they were very nice. Other than that, it was just doing the work to get the pension, the aid and attendance pension. I can't think of any problems we had at the clinic. I mean, they were very good. Sent him his medications. There were never any problems with that.
Or I can't talk to you though, the whole power of attorney, and
Oh
I
my
know, like Social Security, you have a power of attorney. No, you need our power of attorney. And
yeah. And that's another thing I harp on at people: get your legal paperwork in order. We talk about Comcast. Rather early in this process, I was at their house and he couldn't get his channels on Comcast. So I called them and they said, are you Lee? Like, no, I'm his daughter. Well, we can't talk to you. I said, well, he's right here. He'll tell you can talk to me. And my dad gets on the phone, dad with dementia, and says, don't listen to my daughter. Don't do anything she says. You can't believe he would say that. So from then on, we kind of primed the pump. Okay, now, Dad, I'm going to make this call for you. And when they ask if I can talk, you say yes.
Yep. I remember, like, with Social Security going through that, and they're like, okay, put them on. And I'm like, if you're taking an answer for somebody who has dementia. My mom was pretty far down the pike.
Yeah.
And it made absolutely no sense to me. And yet I understand they have to protect the privacy and stuff, but
Sure. Right.
but have to having their own power of attorney, and I can't remember if the vets had their own as well when I was working with them or
Well,
not.
they have forms where the veteran has to grant you permission to speak for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they're not capable of doing that, I don't know what you do. I'm sure you'd have to. I don't know what you do. I mean, unless you have an attorney, maybe they take it, but I don't know. But they do have their own, whatever I can't remember the form number, but oh yeah, in clinics, a lot of them have their own forms, and it's complicated.
Yeah. So, and again, when it comes to those types of things, it's good to have just almost a document with all those basic things that you need from
Right.
what is it, the DD-12? Is that
Yeah.
the discharge thing? Because, when you call in, I mean, I remember calling and going, well, I need his discharge papers. What form do you need? I don't know. I need his discharge. I mean, but they call it a number and stuff. And again, it depends on who you get on the phone. And this was, back in, oh my gosh, in 2000, probably 2001, so things have changed hopefully a lot with that. But, just having, the medications and the doctors and the contacts and the power of attorney. I used to carry the power of attorney. I had one in the car. I had one in the purse.
Yep. I think there's another one at the VA clinic that I had to sign that I could get information on him. So I think that was a different form. His
Because,
medication didn't come or something,
yep,
I had to manage all that.
yeah. Well, and I found too that just because you gave it to an organization doesn't mean they're going to be able to find it when you
Well,
come in again.
exactly. Yes, exactly. And that's why I'd be on the phone. I know I sent this form in. I could just imagine I'm looking through files, or maybe it's on the computer and not being able to find it. And supposedly they have streamlined some of those websites so people
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, I know at Wells Fargo, I gave it to them. I don't know how many times they
Oh,
would always ask. And I think my mom was getting like a $90 benefit. It wasn't anything much after my
I
dad died,
know.
but it was $90 and she could use that. And so they were just crazy. And I'm like, why won't someone just raise it high enough to understand we have millions of veterans out there that need this help, and we have millions of people with powers of attorney that they are dealing with. Just take 15 minutes and code a spot where you
Yes.
can save it.
Yeah.
Because they would take it and they would make a copy and they would make a note, but then the next guy couldn't find where the note was.
Oh, I know. Yeah, the change of address form. I don't know how many times I sent them that change of address form. Like, please change, and that's got to happen, especially with older people that, yeah, they might be moving to a nursing home or assisted living or something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
so again, just because you did it once doesn't mean you're not going to have to do it again or make a
Sure.
copy. The other thing I found was if I'm filling out a form, if I'm not like at the clinic and I'm at home, make a copy of it before you drop it in the mail
Oh,
in case
sure, yeah.
you got to do it again.
Yeah, so you remember what you put down. Oh, I know. It's
Yeah.
system and the whole. We could talk. I'm sure you've talked to people for hours about the medical system and using those documents and accessing records. It's
Yep.
all very frustrating.
It is. Now, let's talk about your book, Dancing with Lewy Body, and how that came about and what people can kind of expect with that as well.
So my book is Dancing with Louie, and the subtitle is um, A Father-Daughter Dance Before and After Lewy Body Dementia Came to Live with Us. So when I'm in going through this whole dementia thing with my dad was somewhat traumatic. He was the father of four daughters. He was a veteran. He was a businessman, and his daughters were not going to tell him what to do. He's the guy who would come rescue us with a flat tire. Even after I was married, it's like, who do I call? My dad. Because my husband might be at work or somewhere. And now all of a sudden, and he asked me one day to take over his money, but then he got mad when I did.
Mm-hmm.
So he would get frustrated and he would get angry. And, he and I are kind of both stubborn and determined. And I made a lot of, like I say, I made some dance steps or missteps along the way. Partially I call that because we were at a wedding, one of our cousin's daughter's weddings, and my dad danced with me, and he hadn't even danced with me in my own wedding. We had a small wedding. And, it was right after that he ended up in the hospital and in the nursing home. That was just really sweet. So I want other caregivers to know they're not alone in this journey with dementia. It's hard to be a daughter, or, it's hard to be a son or whatever. But in the end, I found forgiveness and grace, and, my faith in God grew a lot just by having my parents taken care of when I couldn't see the way.
Mm-hmm.
And, all in all, it's an honor to walk through those final years with one's parents. Maybe we didn't always get along, or they didn't agree with me, or I didn't agree with them, but it's just, you just have to look at it as an honor that you can help them and be there for them and just learn a lot about yourself while caregiving.
Oh, exactly. It's so often I think people think that, they're they're not there. I mean, they've been told they're just a shell of a body, and there's so many misconceptions and myths and stigmas, and life can still be really rich,
Yeah.
on a lot of different levels. And I don't think we can scream that message loud enough. And
Mm-hmm.
granted, there's going to be some weird and maybe even some uncomfortable times that you're going to
Oh,
shake
yeah.
your head and go, what just happened? But you look back at your own life and your parents have done that with you.
Yep.
and you've done it with your friends, and you've done it with other people too, where it's just like, you know, it's a hiccup, and those are like smaller hiccups versus that constant, care. But once you get kind of to the root of the relationship and accept that the disease exists, and that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't, control it, and you
No.
don't, and you can't really even project what's always going to happen.
No.
And most of us, consciously or unconsciously, we want to control that. We want to know ahead of time. I found it spurred on kind of my sense of humor, going, because I finally, for the most part, released that need for control. And then
Right.
I could see kind of the humor in it, and not laughing at my mom with dementia, or somebody. It's just a funny incident in life that you look back and actually is really heartwarming afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
Did you find that as well?
For sure. You always have family jokes and stories. And I mean, one family joke was when I first met my husband, John, I told my dad, I met this man, and pretty serious. My dad says, well, does he have a job? So then we joked about that for years. And so even when he had dementia, I'd say, oh, remember, Dad, when you asked me if John had a job? And he would laugh at that, even if he couldn't hardly talk. So, they're just other family. He loved to tell jokes. So we'd pull up some of his old jokes and tell him. Yeah. And, sometimes he'd stumble over words and we'd all laugh, not
Mm-hmm.
laugh at him, but he would laugh too. So,
Yep.
you
Yep.
just got to find the humor and find the moments of joy. I mean, my mom was pretty decrepit when she got old, but I remember one of the last things we did, we took her to a play, at the Lyric Arts here in town. And,
Mm-hmm.
and when I went there and she died, I'm like, wow, last time I see her was mom and my four sisters. And, just those just precious memories that you have. And I spent more time with my parents when they were, I was a caregiver than I had for years and years, because I'd married and had kids and I was busy. And
Mm-hmm.
especially my dad, I'd drive him around because he couldn't drive after a while. And, he would back, before then, he would tell stories about his childhood. And, it was horrible, but it was precious. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. There's just so much life to be lived, and we have to not go down the rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
really see, what is still here, what are we still able to do. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think we focus so much on, is the person we're caring for able to do certain things, excuse me, instead of focusing on ourselves. What are we able to do to improve this situation?
Right.
Sometimes I think that inward look makes a really big difference, instead of always, analyzing everything else. I think we have to turn inwards and
Yeah.
say, how can I improve this? And what you're doing here in terms of sharing these benefits and sharing the stories, regarding your own family, and you've written a book, and you've got this, wealth of information on your website, and getting out there and speaking about it, that, to me, that's an inward look, going, okay, I can help the next person through this
Right.
process. And, we're dementia specific here, but, you know, to me, I've always said whatever's good for dementia is good for the world. And you can apply all these skills and all this knowledge to a lot of different things in life. So even as Nancy's telling you how to maneuver the VA system, those are going to be helpful hints to maneuver other organizations that you need as
Yes.
well, and documents. And again, it's not just dementia specific. It's not only vets getting dementia, needless to say, out there. So these tips are helpful on so many different levels. Anything else that you want to talk about regarding the book? How can they get it, and what kind of flow does it have? Is it storytelling? Does it have resources in it? Is it something you have to read front from back, or some books are kind of a resource book where you kind of tab things and go, I'm going to remember that.
So it's a memoir, and because I think kind of sequentially, it's kind of in order. And some of the poems tell the story. So very first part is my dad talking about growing up in Brainerd, Minnesota, and he has a poem about his mom and a poem about his dad. And, I cover a little bit of when he went into the service, when he was at the end of World War II, but he did serve for 20 months. And then I just kind of jump into his dementia and the progression and a
Mm-hmm.
lot about how I felt and how maybe I was angry and frustrated and we didn't get along always to the end, to the message of grace and hope. Also
Mm-hmm.
in the back, because I am kind of nerdy, I have some resources. I think I do have one on veterans benefits. There's information there and some other various topics just to help people out. And I do want to mention I wrote one other book. It's called Remarkable Caregiving, The Care of Family and Friends. And it's 6 stories or 2 stories. I interviewed people. So there's one about a mom with Alzheimer's, which they did not have the necessary paperwork in place. And the the daughter was faced with kidnapping the mom, which is the whole story. And a couple of stories about Parkinson's, again, which is often closely related to dementia, or there is Parkinson's with dementia. And then a couple of stories about, another woman taking care of her mother, and a couple about kids with handicaps, um, disabilities, like one with a young man with Down syndrome. And it's more about an adult and how did they take care of him. So again, then in the back, there's several different checklists and things. There's one that the story about Parkinson's, where the woman and her husband took care of her dad for 4 years. She has like a question and answer sort of checklist. So if you're thinking about taking your aging loved one into your home,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that cannot be a decision made in haste or taken lightly, whether they have dementia or Parkinson's or they're just aging. And she put together some very thoughtful questions of, does everybody in the house agree? Do you have, the facilities? Do you have a bathroom the person can use? Are they mobile enough? And she was very, very dedicated taking care of her dad for those 4 years. So yeah, definitely there's tools in both books and just ways to help people. And you can read about them. I have several pages on my website. I don't sell them on my website anymore. I used to, but that got very complicated. So you can get them from Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com or different places where you can order books. I have ebooks, and then there's there's soft cover books. So
Okay. Okay.
they're
Great.
available there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, in wrapping up, I think there was another poem you were going to share with us about not looking back. Is that correct?
And this again was written by my dad, and I love this poem so much I put it on the back of Dancing with Louie. And this poem is dedicated to all our veterans out there and their caregivers. Don't look back, friend, look ahead. You'll meet the living, not the dead. Soldiers meet the enemy face to face. They don't run a backward race. If you can't find the enemy up ahead, it's because you stopped fighting, and friend, you're dead. Because in this life, the enemy's there. You may not always know just where. So make up your mind, the hour is late. Some battles are small and some are great. You'll be fighting God's battle right up to the gate. So lead on, warrior, and don't despair. Because at the end of the battle, we'll all be there.
That is so beautiful. It's just
I know.
it applies to all of life. If you're a caregiver, if you're a mom struggling, having a hard day with your kids, or
Yeah.
for kids to understand life isn't always easy, but just never give up. Maneuver through it.
Yeah.
I just your dad's poetry is very, very powerful.
Oh,
Just
like I
the
said, you
two
can
that
read
I've heard.
this book, Dancing with Louie, and maybe some days I'll convince my sisters we should publish some more of it. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Well,
Yeah.
anything that we haven't covered that I missed in terms of my questions with you that you think our audience needs to know, Nancy?
I can't think of anything. Like we mentioned, there will be an article Lori will post, and you can get some of these phone numbers and different organizations. There's some links in there, or again, if you print it out, you can find some of these resources. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I said the VSO is out there. You probably have a county or regional VA officer, and they want to help you. again, our veterans, we owe so much to them, and we just need to find ways to make their lives better.
Exactly. Exactly. And, share this information, guys. Don't keep it to yourself. Yeah, you can use it, your family can use it, but so can friends and so can colleagues and so can, people in your own sphere that maybe you're not as close to, that follow you on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook. We all have those people that we don't know really close, but there's a reason you're tied together. And just make the journey easier for everyone else. I say be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share. Doesn't cost you any money, takes very, very little time, but the power of sharing, I think, is so worthy and so important, and it has a big impact. And you might not know it, but how many things have you seen maybe on the internet that someone else has shared that you're grateful for? Remember that. You don't always get a thanks, but that doesn't make it any less powerful. So again, join Alzheimer's Speaks in being a giver of hope. Again, you can go to Nancy's website, nancyrpoland.com, or you can go to gracesmessage.com. Either of those, they're kind of one and the same there, as Nancy had said. So, again, you can subscribe to her newsletter. You can download that caregiver checklist for important documents and things like that. Sounds like there's some other poems you might be able to access there. And you can learn more about her book. But again, her books, both of those you can get through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. And we're going to have all these links and stuff in the show notes as well. And then we'll have this other article that will be really easy just to print out and get those things. You can also follow her and connect with her on Facebook and LinkedIn, and it'll always be Twitter to me. I don't care what Elon Musk says as far as X. Twitter always comes out of my mouth. I should be more respectful of the name change, I guess. So whatever you call it, X or Twitter, you can find her there as well. Thanks, everyone. And Nancy, again, thank you for all the work that you've done and your willingness to share it with everyone to make the world a little better place for people. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori, and I appreciate all you do.
Wonderful. Thanks. Oh, and Nancy is also on Dementia Map. So that's another way you can find her as well. So have a wonderful week, everyone. Till the next show. Bye now.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebesti here, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people could just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.